Hello, I am Jay Horton. I make movies that make money, and this is how. So, today we're going to be going over 2024 in distribution and marketing year in review. And it's been a year. It's been a crazy year, man. We've had some really high highs in independent film and, some low lows. I'll be talking about both. And you're more than welcome to drop comments, both on, I think I'm on Facebook and YouTube. I should be able to read them out here. And I will try to get to all of the comments. Hold on one second. Sorry, I had one technical issue. Okay, now that is resolved. So anyway, I want to preface this by saying, on my YouTube channel and the advice that I give on filmmaking and distribution, guys, this is the indie film business is a matter of perspective. And like a lot of people look at it through the lens of where they're coming from. So, like if you talk to, some producers that have been in it for 20 or 30 years and have worked on like, big shows, like studio level stuff, they're going to have a completely different opinion than someone like myself, I've worked on a few of those, but I've mostly worked on smaller independent films. The highest budgeted movie I've ever directed myself was $250,000. Most things I've done have been way under that, so like that's where my point of view is coming from. When I talk about the independent film distribution, the landscape is tough right now. I'm mostly referring to projects that are $250,000 or under in budget, most of them well under. So like that's where I'm talking about. Now there are some generalities that bleed over into the larger things, and then even within the smaller movies there's all kinds of different things. Like for example, I do a lot of documentaries, a lot, so in the past 5 years, documentaries have really almost eclipsed my filmography. I still make narrative films, but I don't make them nearly as much. I don't make them quite as cheap as I used to. And I fill in that space with the documentaries. So, a lot of my personal data is coming from, I have a library of about probably around 90 films now. And, probably 75% of that is documentaries because I've done so many in the last, several years. But, a good, 20, 25 of those are narratives. So I have a pretty good, nose to the ground reading those, and not to mention, I see numbers from 2,000 plus other filmmakers through relationships that I have, and I see those every quarter. So anyway, that is why I feel like I can speak with some authority on the generalities of independent film. But as soon as I start talking about some of the negative stuff, some people will say, well, you just have to do this, or you just have to make a good movie, or you just have to market right. And it's all just more complicated than that. And and if I do talk about some negative stuff, it's not to dissuade people. I just want people to be aware of the market, and that it is in fact tough, and that just by me saying that the marketplace is tough for independent films, that is not pessimistic. That is just like that's a reality. That's the world we're living in, and for most people it is very tough. That they're and anyway. So before I get to questions, the first thing I wanted to talk about is Tubi, because that's been on people's filmmakers' lips, for the past 5 years. Tubi this, Tubi that, and man, Tubi was freaking awesome, and still is to an extent. But so like when Tubi first started hitting, I don't know, what has it been, like 5-6 years? I mean, it's older than that, but I think it really started gaining momentum about 5 years ago. And like that, like AVOD just kind of exploded, and there were filmmakers, and still are, that they're making movies and they put them out and they're out on Tubi and they're making $100,000 in a month. Now I'm not saying that a lot of movies do that, but there are some that do. Especially like there's all these cats making films in Detroit And a good number of those are are doing numbers like that. Or there's a filmmaker named Lisa Brown. Man, I forget where she's out of now. Maybe Texas, but she sees, or so I hear, sees numbers like that. So, but now what has happened in the past 5 years is that is slowly went down. Now, there's a lot of different factors, for why, Tubi might be slowing down. One of them is, Amazon and blah, 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 blah. Amazon and Netflix both, now offer the ads on their premium stuff. And so the ad spending, is now spread out amongst more platforms. So where, an advertiser might have been spending, say, X amount of dollars, say we're spending $50 million this quarter on, Tubi ads. Now the next quarter, they might take 20% of that and start spreading it out, into Netflix and Amazon. That's just one of the things. Then, of course, there's oversaturation, all that. But so look, I mentioned earlier, I had, 90 films in my library, right? So from between between 2020 and 23, like mid 23, like I had pretty much a base amount of revenue that I would earn every month from my library, not counting new titles, because new titles are always going to spike your numbers, and those numbers never fell below a certain point, right? Now, over the past 6 months, that line has dropped pretty drastically for me, at least on Tubi. Not everywhere, but on Tubi. So like I saw, I think it was in June. It was like between June and July. I saw almost a 50% drop in Tubi numbers overall. You're talking mostly library titles, older films. I'm not counting new stuff. When you have new stuff, it's always going to spike, like I just said. But that was just me. And then also looking at other filmmakers' numbers, like I said, I see numbers from about, 2,000 plus filmmakers a quarter. And back in 2020, you would have, maybe a dozen, maybe 15, somewhere like close to 20 filmmakers that were seeing like $100,000 or plus quarters, on Tubi. And there'd be like a dozen of them, or maybe 20. There was a lot, not a lot, but anyway, 12 to 20. Now, today, I would say there's like 4 or 5 in that same sample size, maybe less. I to be honest, I haven't looked this quarter. It had dropped the quarter previously. It was like pretty drastic. Might have only been even 1 or 2 in that sample size, so it's definitely dropped. Now, and like I said before, there are still filmmakers that are doing well. A friend of mine has been making movies for, I don't know, like 7 years now, and has done not great financially with them up to this point, but just released one a few months back, and had like almost a $10,000 a month on Tubi, and so in his mind, well, man, Tubi's fucking great, but overall it's gone lower. So what I think has become even more important than ever is what's become even more important than ever is to diversify our income streams. So, for example, I've talked before about how I was never much of a film festival guy, and and I'm still not, but I do think there's a space right now for filmmakers to get into, theatrical runs, whether you're four-walling and selling tickets, or you're finding independent theaters to partner with and are splitting 50-50 revs. Like Peter Higuchi, who did a movie called The Occult. He's kind of like not pioneered, but at least for independent films at this level, is pioneering a new, push for smaller films to go into theaters. And I'm going to talk about more on that in a few minutes. I'm going to talk about A Hard Place and how Craving did last year and all of that. But right now, since we're starting to get a few more people in here and questions are starting to mount up, I'm going to start going into a few questions. All right. Friends of the Night asks, "Hey Jay, who do you plan on using for distribution for A Hard Place? Do you find any that stand out? Differences between Indie Rights and Film Hub?" So I've talked about differences between Indie Rights and Film Hub 100 times. I'm not going to get back into them. What I am doing for distribution on A Hard Place, and I honestly, I guess this is my announcement of it because I haven't said anything. I am going with Film Hub for A Hard Place, and it is not the standard deal. I get an MG up front. The rev split is a little bit different. It's more of a traditional distribution deal. They approached me about it. I guess they are starting to offer it to certain films and filmmakers, and I was like one of the first like dozen or so that were selected. So A Hard Place will be distributed by Film Hub. We will have a set release date. It'll hit streaming. We were initially going to come out first week of February, but we've decided to push it a few months because of the theatrical release, which I'm going to be talking about in a minute. So right now our streaming release is tentatively set for, I believe it's first week of May, but we may even push that further if the drive-in run catches on, which, we'll know about here in a few weeks. But that's pretty much what I'm doing with distribution on them. Like Film Hub's going to be changing. Like their current model is never going to go away. They're always going to have the free upload free to the 80/20, but they are going to offer a lot more paid services, whether they're in marketing or whatever, closed caption creating. But you don't necessarily have to do those things. But they're also like, honestly, I think they're a little tired of being known as like a last stop, distribution option, try everything else. And then if nothing else works, go with Film Hub has been kind of a common, train of thought. And I don't think that's really fair to them. And I believe that what they're trying to do now is change the perception. And, once A Hard Place comes out, I'll be talking a lot more about that. JM says, would you ever consider distributing a film with a fan? To be honest, I no nice way to say it. No. I have like right now I am working on 7 documentaries. I'm doing the release for A Hard Place. I'm getting ready to start raising funds for my next big horror movie. And, I'm extremely slammed. It isn't a matter of not wanting to collaborate or not wanting to bring in new people. I literally not enough hours in the day for me to do what I'm doing. What was this? Jam, how would you go about getting a film on the movie section of YouTube? As far as I know, you can only do it through a distributor or an aggregator, and it's still up to YouTube whether they take it or not. I don't believe you can directly submit those. All right. I'd love to know what your theatrical run for A Hard Place looks like. It sounds like you're doing a little more of a traveling show like Peter H did with The Occult. Have you tried to go wider? Yeah, actually it's very similar to what Peter did with The Occult and what he's doing right now with Hundreds of Beavers. I mean, honestly, if you're doing a movie and you don't get extremely lucky, like the Winnie the Pooh movie, or like one of those, it's very hard to go very wide. Now you can get a lot wider than you think doing the roadshow thing, and to be clear, like the roadshow thing, like a lot of people think we're out there renting theaters and then selling tickets. Like that's not it. You partner with these different theaters and you do like rev splits of the box office. So we're not paying to rent. It's like a legit theatrical release. And initially, anyway, we'll be in 5 cities. So like 5 cities and 5 states. So like you premiere in one city, like say on a Wednesday, and then you'll play for 2 weeks, Monday through Wednesday, the weeks after that in each of those. And then if you are, selling a decent amount of tickets, they'll expand that out. Now, the chain that we're working with is called, I believe, Imagine in the Midwest, and they have something like 35 theaters. And the thing about the theatrical stuff, especially these like independent chains, is like it's very incestuous. So like once a movie starts selling tickets in one, it's easier to widen out into others. So how wide you go, really, it just depends on the movie, how well you market it. You know, I think we will do well, but who knows? I mean, we might hit some of these Midwest cities and sell out the first two and then not sell any in the third or fourth, and so who knows? And then on top of that, another thing that he suggests is running a drive-in circuit, and I'm going to a drive-in convention in Florida at the end of this month, or I'm sorry, end of January, to pitch drive-in owners. But yeah, there, like as far as going like wide, I still don't think that's completely feasible for independent films without money. Like for example, like we pitched to AMC, playing in a few of those, and like they won't talk to you unless you're talking about a $10,000 marketing budget per screening. And I just like, I'm nowhere close to being able to afford something like that. All right, Elijah, thanks for all your videos, man. I was just wondering how movies on YouTube channels like Movie Central make money. Does the YouTube have a special agreement with these channels to pay more? So I do believe that there are MCNs that get better deals with YouTube as far as the rev split from the ads. But if there is, it's not publicly known. As far as I know, the way it works is, their channels just like anybody else. They get a rev split just like anybody else. The main difference is you have somebody like Movie Central. They have, millions of subscribers. So your video is more likely to get more views than it would say on your own channel with 10 or 20,000 subscribers. That said, over about the past year, my YouTube channel has grown. I think I'm around 36,000 subscribers now, which isn't huge. But what I found, and it seems like it wouldn't be this way, but I found that, especially my documentaries do better on my own channel than they do on bigger channels. For example, I finished 3 diet documentaries pretty much at the same time. Very comparable quality. All 3 featured the same people being interviewed, real similar in runtime, everything. And one of those is on, Indie Rights YouTube channel. And, they have, I forget how many, like 400,000 subscribers. And, I think it has around 30,000 views. Its sister documentary is on my own channel and it has like 200,000 views. You know what I mean? Or, I have a UFO doc, again, that is on a couple of MCNs through Film Hub. But yet on my own channel, it has less views, but I've made more money. So you can make, like if a video takes off on YouTube, you're going to make money on it regardless of where it is, as long as it's a monetized channel, in my opinion. All right, let's see here. Scott Ward, I'm sorry, my nose is really itchy, guys. I swear I'm not snorting coke. I just really itchy today. In your opinion, for indie films, is it better to define your market and the more niche the better, or strive for a broader audience? As for a bit of color, I've been working with a director here in Oregon who is making crazy local niche market films. There's no general answer to that. There are some people that are like very so common knowledge rule of thumb is if the less money you have, the more you should niche. But honestly, in this day and age, I don't know if that's true or not. You can do higher quality things that don't necessarily have to be, small and niche. I think there can be a lot of value in niching down. And I think there can also be value in doing something broader. It honestly, just like everything else, it just comes down to the individual project. Niching is not a bad way to go. Just because normal money for I mean, again, it just that totally 100% comes down to the videos. It's not about the channel. It's about your individual videos. I have several videos that have 30 and $40 CPMs, and then I have others that have 96 cents CPMs. It just depends on the video. But the payout in general, it's not bad. It just depends on the video. Hi, Jason. Thank you for this. And how do you choose documentary subjects? Do you think it's possible to match the streaming algorithms? No. I think anybody that tries to figure out the algorithm or what's going to move, it's a losing battle. Like I don't necessarily chase popular things. That said, I do tend to, like, if I have a documentary subgenre that does well, I do tend to return to it. So like I've done a lot of Bigfoot documentaries, I've done a lot of UFO documentaries, but and even within those, like it's always like, like the one that I think is going to go do really big is going to make a few $100s, and the one that I think is like garbage is going to make $20,000. So it just depends. But no, I don't think you can. Don't think you can match. I don't think you can figure out the algorithms. Oh, hey, Aaron, how's it going, man? Look forward to doing your show in a couple of days, man. Yeah. Okay. So I said a few times that I advertised a lot on Facebook, but I never said Facebook was the best place to advertise. I said it was the best place for me. And the reason for that was I was really familiar with Facebook. I'm an older dude. I use Facebook a lot. I know the ins and outs of it. That's why I've had better luck advertising there than, say, TikTok or Instagram. It's just because I'm not as familiar with doing ads there, and that is all. And in general, what I've heard is that more people are doing better on TikTok with ads than Facebook. But I mean, it's neither here nor there. To be further honest, it's been a long time since I posted the videos about advertising on Facebook, and I personally have not ran ads on Facebook in probably over a year. Honestly, right now, I'm not doing a ton of social media paid marketing. I'm getting ready to do a little bit of it for the theatrical run for A Hard Place. Like, I'm going to do some localized targeted ads on TikTok for those screenings. But I like, honestly, right now things have changed so much on social media and the algorithms and the advertising. There's so many bots now. I honestly would be, and even on the spending I'm getting ready to do, it's very conservative and very, like, pretty low amounts. But right now, I guess my short answer is I really don't know anything about like paid marketing at the moment and how successful it is. Because like I saw a major, like I was doing it, I was spending like between $200 and $500 a month on paid ads from like 1919 to about 23. Maybe mid 23 was when I stopped. And I just, I decided, I did a couple experiments in 23 where I just stopped spending and see if the revenue shifted any. And I saw no major shifts in revenue. And granted, a $500 spend is not really enough to even say whether that's a direct correlation or not. But like, until I have a more substantial amount to spend on marketing, I don't think small amounts really help that much. That's kind of my present take on advertising. That said, I did just on A Hard Place. I just spent, quite a bit of money hiring a couple of different PR firms. One that's targeted a little bit more towards me personally, and one that's targeted a little more towards the movie. So I do believe in spending. I just not right now. I'm not very bullish on paid ads. All right. Darth Prometheus. Do you think Indiegogo makes sense for someone with low range, like maybe to collect money for a horror movie? I think Indiegogo can work for anyone as long as you hustle it. I mean, and if you're going to do like, a low range movie, you have to hustle the same way you would do a big range. You got to take it serious. You have to prep for it in advance. When I do an Indiegogo campaign, I spend about 60 days beforehand creating material and getting ready for it, sometimes longer. Like I create one hell of a pitch video. Like if you're willing to go all in and do the work, then it can be successful for anyone. But if you're looking to just kind of like part time and throw a couple of posts up, it's not going to be anything. Man, really coffee today. Would you say a filmmaker has a better chance to make money if they market and have a good distributor to make more money? If they market. So I'm not exactly sure. Your question's worded kind of funny. You're saying, is it you have a better chance to make money if you market and have a good distributor? Yeah, I guess. I mean, honestly, as far as distributors go, this is just my line on distributors and good distributors. A good distributor is one that's not going to rip you off. And once you find the half a dozen or so of those that have good reps that are out there, you're going to make about the same money regardless of what distribution avenue you go with. They're all going to get you on the same platforms. You're going to make the same amount of money. So I don't necessarily think there's a lot of value in chasing certain individual distributors. It just, if they want you and your movie's a good fit for them, you take them. Sorry, that was kind of a half-assed answer. What are your thoughts on investors? Okay, all right, let's do this. What are your thoughts on investors, and do filmmakers need to use them more for their films? Yeah, man. I mean, for sure. Investors are great. I think the important thing is not you can't like count on outside things to green light your movie. But yeah, I'm all for finding investors. I mean, I crowdfunded Craving and A Hard Place, but only to a certain extent. Like a Craving, we raised 70,000 through crowdfunding, and then another 35 through equity investors, right, traditional investors. And then A Hard Place was 130 in crowdfunding, and I think we raised around 50 in traditional investors. So like I always do a mix of it. But yeah, investors are great. How do you think windowing has changed over the recent years? How long would you wait before putting a profitable TVOD title to AVOD? That's a really good question. And yes, I do think it has changed even in the last year. If you would have asked me this question a year ago, I would have said no more than a month. Now my answer would be as long as it's making like what you consider to be, a very profitable. Until it drops below that or below a certain point, I wouldn't. Usually what I look for, and this is just real general, I look for a 30 to 40% drop. And then after that 30 to 40% drop, then like I know it's gonna fall pretty fast after that. So I'll start, moving towards AVOD at that point, generally speaking. But yeah, I don't think, and the other thing about that is if you're doing this yourself or through a place like, like Film Hub or, even a distributor like Indie Rights, it might take some time to get up on that other platform. So like, if you're doing Film Hub, for example, it could take a few months. So like I would probably submit it for the AVOD almost on top of it, or if it's just a matter of removing the block, then whatever, a month or two. But yeah, I would look at your numbers. Like whenever you feel like that TVOD is falling off or not giving you what you need, or you think you can get more on AVOD, then go ahead. And I think like, and I still hold to what I used to say about windowing was I don't think there'll be a lot of damage to your TVOD numbers from the AVOD. So yeah, because they're different ecosystems. There'll be some, but like I don't think you'll see, like if I was a betting man, like I would put $1,000 down and say if you went on AVOD today, that it wouldn't affect your TVOD numbers drastically. Would be my, but that's also a guess, and things have changed. And like, and if it's my own movie, I'm a little more conservative. So, like with A Hard Place, for example, I definitely will initially launch just on TVOD, and then we'll look at those TVOD numbers, like with Film Hub, and then decide when to open up on AVOD based on what the TVOD numbers are doing. But, generally speaking, like I said, towards the beginning, once it drops to a point you're not happy with, then open up. Can you talk more about four-walling independent theaters? How'd you approach them? So, yeah. I do think I know a lot of people are doing four-walling. Like I said, I do want to be clear about the roadshow for A Hard Place. That is not a four-wall situation. There may be a few theaters that we end up renting, but for the most part, we're partnering with the theaters and splitting box office with them. But as far as regular four-walling goes, it is just a matter of getting the contact information for the theater, the person that books the movies, and calling or emailing. And it's cold calls and it's emails. And, a lot of them are private owners. So you're like talking to the owners. It's like fairly informal. But it's a matter of getting on the phone or getting on the computer and hustling. There's no like, magic directory of them or anything as far as I know. Now, the other thing, second part of that question, what about being at the theaters for Q&As and selling merch? So like for the roadshow we're doing, like I said, we'll premiere, I think it's 5 theaters in 5 different states. So every state will have a premiere. And I think it's pretty important to be there for those premieres, to do the Q&As, to bring people in. Yeah. And then you can also use that as, publicity for, whenever you do streaming or physical media or whatever afterwards. But, it's a give and take, because you also got to look at your expenses. So, like me, for example, we're doing most of these screenings around the Midwest, some in the Southwest, and almost all of them are out of a range where I can drive. So, I got to look at travel costs, because while I'm not renting the theater, I still have to travel there. I have to pay for my flight. I have to pay for my lodging. If I'm going to sell merch, you have to pay for that merch up front. So, it is a cost. It is a risk. But I believe you can do well with it. I mean, here's the thing. I don't know a lot about conventions or selling merch in person, because it's not something I've done a lot. On A Hard Place, I'm planning on doing it quite a bit. So like, we're doing this premiere in Dayton on the 12th. I'll be there doing the Q&A, selling merch. Then on the 15th, I have another screening in Reno. I'll be there, Q&A, selling merch. And then the 17th to the 19th, I'll be at the Days of the Dead horror convention in Vegas, and I'll be selling merch. And then I figure after those 3 events, I'll have kind of a better gauge for like, how much merch I can or can't sell. And then I'll decide based on that, how far I want to go into a full like convention run. But yeah, on A Hard Place, I'm doing a lot more with like merch and, theatrical distribution than I've ever done before. So a lot of this is new to me. So like, I don't want to talk with it on too much authority yet. As I get a little more experience with it and, I'm in the trenches, I'll be talking more about it. How much of what you do distribution wise is based on research and how much is gut instinct? It is mostly research and experience, honestly. But then, everything in distribution, even when, like I've talked a lot about, picking distributors or going with indie rights or doing Film Hub or, like those are all, those are all gambles, because like, for certain movies, indie rights is 100% the way to go. For other movies, Film Hub is the way to go. And it just depends on the movie. And I'm not always right. Like, I've put some with indie rights. I'm like, I should have put this one with Film Hub. And I've done the same with Film Hub. I put stuff with Film Hub. I'm like, dang, I should have done indie rights. So it just, it just really there's a lot of gut that goes into it, but for me, it's mostly at this stage experience and research. Dreamscape Productions asks, "Are you planning to continue to go the crowdfunding route?" So yes, at least for the immediate future. I've talked about this a few times before, but the indie market is rough right now, and I don't like making movies for $30,000 or $40,000 anymore or less, like narrative films. Like where I'm comfortable at is more in the $100,000 to $250,000 range, and like honestly, I'm not independently wealthy enough to fund that myself. And in this current market, like regardless of the quality of the script or the attachments, it's a risk. So like I'm a little more apt to at least crowdfund a portion of it. Like on a hard place, for example, we crowdfunded like I don't know 70% of it, but there was we had I think close to 50,000 in equity. So I still like to do a combination of both, but I don't like to take more equity than I'm like 90% sure I'm going to return. Like if it's anything less than that, I personally don't like to mess with it. But that's just I'm a big believer in paying back what you owe, which I've had movies where it hasn't worked out. So I try to minimize that risk, and that's why I crowdfund today. Oh, what about markets? Does the accreditation worth any advice? Are you talking about film markets? It, I mean, it totally depends on what you're doing at the market. I personally think markets are predominantly for uh, like buyers and big companies that are coming together for bigger deals. I you know, I'm not saying that there are not like smaller filmmakers that come in there and get deals or get stuff done. They do, but I'd say by and large these are more for larger companies and established companies. I've went to a lot of the markets. I've personally never made a deal at a market that I couldn't have made by phone or by email. So I personally think for independent producers, it's more of a like a status thing. But I do think there's some value in that status. For example, the couple of years I went to Cannes, I mean, we had a lot of production companies that looked at us a lot more serious because, oh, they were at Cannes, they must be the big deal. And I mean, honestly, it was just we had an angel investor in the company. He booked us the trip, booked us the theater. I mean, we just went. A lot of people do that, but it does. I think there's some status stuff that comes with it that can help, but I don't think I'm not. I don't know. And to be further honest, it's been almost 2 years since I've been to a market. So, like a lot of things have changed in the last couple of years too. And I am a little bit out of the loop there. What chances does a genre film with no name cast get a distribution deal? Honestly, I mean, I mean, any genre film with a no-name cast can get distributed. I guess it depends on what you mean by a distribution deal. I mean, if you mean, are you going to get a large MG, like money up front? No. But even with a name cast, you're going to have trouble getting that. So, like distribution deals of the past, like those things just don't happen like that anymore, or at least not very often. But as far as like distribution goes, like it's not hard to get distribution. It's a matter of getting people to actually watch the movie and make money on it. Getting it distributed is the easy part. Do Black Street films still sell on Tubi? Yes. Generally speaking, yes. As a matter of fact, we were having this conversation about Tubi numbers dropping in my distribution group a couple weeks ago, and there were several filmmakers from Detroit that came in to say, "Hey, we're still making a lot of money," and they are. But like one of them said, like we're still making like bank, but granted it is less than it was 3 years ago. So in general, like, if I was concocting a formula to make a successful movie on Tubi, it would be a black movie, and and a street movie. I personally, wouldn't do that because it would be disingenuous of me. And I think part of the reasons, the ones that actually succeed, I've said this a few times, but I think it's because of the authenticity. It's not necessarily about the production value or like how great it looks or great it sounds. There's an authenticity to the good ones. They feel real, and I think that's why they do well. Eric, how important is it to get a somewhat famous person in your movie to make it more successful on streaming? I don't think it's very important anymore. Well, it depends on the level you're talking about. If you are making a movie for like $30,000-$40,000 and you're talking about like, $1,000 a day, like horror convention level names, they are not going to move your sales needle much at all. Like when I cast, Felissa Rose or Lynn Laurie in Hard Place, I didn't do that for sales. Like Felissa, I cast because I'd worked with her on Craving. She's a fantastic actress. She brings a great energy, and actors like at that level do help for crowdfunding. But as far as sales go, I don't think you're going to see that big a difference. I think the amount of money you need to spend on an actor that will help you with streaming is going to be outside of what the budget can accommodate most of the time. So I don't really have an answer for this, but I wanted to put it up because it's a really good question. What opportunities do you see in 2025 regarding genres or underserved film markets? Man, I wish I do, because if I did, I'd be working on it, but I don't, man. And this is what I know I've talked a lot in the past about, find an underserved market, but in general, I kind of think that was bad advice, because I think in general, chasing any genre that you think is going to be, financially viable is kind of a fool's errand, because it changes so often, So like anymore, what I just try to do, I know this sounds kind of hippy dippy, but I just try to do projects that excite me, and then on the other hand, that I do think has some financial viability. But I don't necessarily chase genres so much anymore. Like with the docs, like I've done a lot of Bigfoot docs. Bigfoot docs tend to do pretty well. So like I'll always do a new Bigfoot doc. I'll always do a new UFO doc. But as far as the new stuff goes, you just never know, man, because they always, like I said, the thing that you think is going to do nothing will do a ton of money, and the thing that you think is going to do really well will do nothing. So it just depends. But yeah, so I don't really believe too strongly in chasing genre anymore. Would you invest time in getting touch directly with local TV stations in your? That's a really interesting question. And if you would have asked me that a year ago, I would have said, I probably, not a bad idea, but I probably personally wouldn't do it. But a year ago, I would have said I personally wouldn't have put a lot of time into theatrical distribution either. And, I met a dude, Peter Hayaguchi, that turned me around on that. And, so I do think if I had the contacts and the right contacts, I think I would. So yeah, I honestly, I think in any idea to try to get your film out there, because I think a lot of filmmakers are like circus bears. This is an analogy a producer told me many years ago. It's like when bears at the circus are really young, this sounds horrible. They chain them with really thick, like chains that they can't move or break. But by the time they're fully grown, or maybe it was elephants, the chain is gone, and it's just a little tiny rope that they could easily break, but they don't think they can. so they don't even try. And I think that's the same thing. Like, I think that was the thing with theatrical distribution. We've just been told over and over we couldn't do it, so we don't try. We've been told over and over that we can't go to TV stations or cable stations, so we don't try. So I don't like. I definitely think it's something I would try. I would probably personally want to hear at least one story from one filmmaker that had done it successfully, like with the cold calls, and like had a method for doing it. I guess I'm not quite a leader in that way, but yeah, I think I think it's worth researching more. I don't know how much time I would put into it, but I definitely think it's worth checking out. Have you considered partnering with another film of similar genre for a drive-through, or seeing that drive-through runs do double features? So from this is just my understanding of it. Because what I was told, the guy that I'm going to the convention with, he did it last year and booked a couple of movies, and they pretty much, the theaters booked them individually and then placed them. Like, so like if you had two movies, for example, you would have less luck filling slots than you would if you just had one. So I think the one movie at a time thing is probably the way to go, unless you're doing like a four wall situation where you're actually renting it out. Then that would be a time to, you know, bring in someone else to mitigate those costs. But as far as the straight booking, I think it's kind of a every man for themselves kind of thing. But again, I'm at the very beginnings of this stuff. I don't really know for sure. So Sean asks, are you going to any horror conventions next year? Yes. Yeah. I have, to be really honest, I've never really done horror conventions before, especially as a filmmaker, like never. So this will be my first time. My first one is going to be the Days of the Dead in Vegas on the 17th. And then I think I'm going to do Days of the Dead in Atlanta the following month. And then I want to do Texas Frightmare. There's like maybe a half a dozen that are on my list. But it's really a lot of it's going to depend on what I do or how I do with merch sales in these first couple of events to decide how many I do or not. Because while I do believe, like I like the networking aspect of it, if it's not paying off financially or it's costing me too much money financially, then it's something that I probably won't take all the way. All right. Okay. So looks like that's our questions for now. So let's talk about shoot, what are we talking about? I just did we pretty much covered Tubi. Talked about Film Hub. So let's talk about the theatrical roadshow for A Hard Place. So on A Hard Place, I really felt like, so I've always went straight to market, and I really felt that like this movie has some legs. Like I feel like it's the best thing I've made so far. It looks great. It's like really well paced. I think it's going to plays really well with audiences. So I wanted to go all in with it. And, I met Peter Higuchi, who had done a roadshow with his movie, The Occult, and is currently doing a theatrical run for Hundreds of Beavers, which, I mean, those guys are making so much money. And anyway, it just convinced me that my movie would be a good fit for it. So, that's what we're doing. And basically the way these theatrical roadshows will work is, we look for small, like independent chains. Like there's one called Imagine in the Midwest. It's a 35 theater chain. And, you get a hold of the person that, books for them. And then, you start booking out the theaters. And usually the way you do these is you'll book a premiere, in a state, like say, we're looking at Evansville, Indiana, for our Indiana premiere. So we'll have a screening there on, say, a Wednesday, and then the following Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it'll play. And then the following week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it'll play that theater. And then if you sell a certain amount of tickets, it'll either play longer at that theater or start opening up into other theaters. And then you'll kind of repeat that cycle. Like, I think were initially we had booked five or six. So like, and we'll do those and then see how it widens out from there. Like if the movie doesn't perform, you won't widen out much. And then at the same time, we'll be trying to book drive-ins. There's a drive-in convention in Florida for drive-in owners at the end of January, which we'll be attending, and I'll be pitching owners directly to get my movie into the drive-ins. And I've never done anything like that, so that'll be pretty exciting and nerve-wracking. So Julie asks, are you using AI at all? Backgrounds, how do you see it affecting the industry? So yes, I do use AI some. I mostly use it for administrative stuff. Like honestly, it makes my bookkeeping that used to take me 2-3 hours a month now takes me about 30 minutes. So I love it for that. The other thing is the other thing I really like it for are I use it for backgrounds for my YouTube thumbnails. Like for this one, I just wanted to do a quick shot of filmmakers on fire. So as opposed to creating that for an hour, I did it on ChatGPT. As far as like in the movies themselves, not so much. I use them in docs. I'll use it to fill out B-roll some. In regular movies, not so much. Sometimes I'll do elements in posters. Like, if I'm looking for, a silhouette of a person or something like that, I'll use them. But I don't really like to do like the whole poster, but I'll do elements from it. So I think it's a tool. And I'll use it. As far as affecting the industry overall, I don't know. It's grown so fast in the last year, and it's getting faster and faster. I mean, I've seen 5 and 6 minute videos, like documentary style, where they were totally created in AI, like a voiceover and B-roll, and it did it all, like with a couple of prompts, and it's like 5 minutes long, and like they're not bad. Like it's not great, but it's not bad. And man, who knows where that'll be a year from now. So it's worrisome, but honestly, it's not within my control. So it's something I don't worry about. I kind of keep up on it just to see what's going on and, the tools that I can use, but I try not to worry about it myself. I feel that ignoring affiliate watching this film is not cool. Oh, you were asking to collaborate or something. Look, this is what I'll say about collaboration, guys. I'm a big believer in collaboration. I don't pick up random crew members from the internet. I just don't. Guys, like making a low budget movie, there are so many things that can go wrong. So many things. And it's not my responsibility or job to give, people shooting opportunities. Like I hire people when I need them. But I don't bring in people just to try out. It's just not something I do. If you had the opportunity to turn them into anime with an AI, probably not. I have messed around with animation. I owned an animation company with a partner and an investor back in 2017 called Gas Money Pictures. And I think that there's a big space for people to do animation and do well in it. I personally, I don't have a project that I think would translate well. I mean, I guess if I had one, I would, but it's not something that I think about very much. All right. So okay. So yes. So I'll be doing some locally targeted social media. So like, for example, we're getting ready to do this premiere in Dayton, Ohio. So like I have joined some like Dayton things to do in Dayton groups. And like once a week I make a post in there about it. I'm also actually starting right after the holidays. I think I'll start it on I'll probably start it on the 2nd or 3rd. I'll start doing some fairly inexpensive paid like TikTok ads that are directed directly at that city, and I'll run those for a week and a half up to the premiere, and then if it's playing there the following week, I may run it an additional week, and then I'll do that for each premiere. And then in addition to that, like for Dayton, I know some people down there, so I was able to send some flyers down to them, and they're doing some local like boots on the ground flyering, and then what Peter that gave me this idea suggested the roadshow thing, that you go down to the place like a week in advance, and so that's and do the boots on the ground. I will do that for the ones that I can, but I won't be able to do it for all of them. But yeah, mostly like social media, targeted ads, sending out press releases to local press, stuff like that. Yeah. Oh, I sure did, Chase. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, man. I'll definitely hit you up. I didn't want to just start posting. I do appreciate that. And I will say this in general, guys. As you're doing, marketing or promotion for your movie, and you're joining groups and you're trying to promote, you really got to watch out. Like how you do that, and be careful about how you do that. Like you don't just jump into a group and just start, blind posting. Like see what kind of posts are in that group. Do they allow that kind of promotion, like stuff like that? Are you adding some value, besides just, hey, come and check out my stuff, And John is one of the actors in A Hard Place, and he also put together the Reno screening. And he's out there doing flyers, sending out local press releases. He's been working with me. We've been passing art back and forth. We're talking about step and repeats. It's been great. So, all right, guys, that's about an hour. If I'm voice is running a little raw, I'm gonna wind down here in a minute. If you have any last questions, now's the time to get them in. But in closing, I do want to say, like, kind of how I opened this up. A lot of what I'm talking about here is coming from my perspective. Like, I don't want anybody to like listen to me and take just what I say for gospel. I'm not, I'm not the end all be all on independent film. I make very small independent films. Like the documentaries I make, they cost like literally nothing except for my time. Like I own the gear. A friend of mine shoots some of the stuff. I shoot some of the stuff. I edit it all. It costs nothing. The narratives I'm doing now, they're a little bit more expensive, 100 or 150,000, but like, I'm not like, big. I'm not doing studio level stuff. I'm not being invited to Disney or anything like that. So, take it with a grain of salt. And always, do what's right for you. Just because it's worked for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you, or just because it didn't work for me doesn't mean it won't work for you. All right. So Dan asked, can you speak more about your merch plans, thoughts on physical copies, maybe a QR code? Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's a good idea. Actually, I got a bunch of the stuff right here. So the first thing I did was t-shirts. So this is one of them right here. There we go. Yeah. Kind of cool, right? So, and these at the print shop I'm using, I think I did shirts. Like it runs about $10 a unit. So I'm planning on selling them for 25, maybe 30 with signed. This is the other one. I like this one. Yeah. It's cool, right? Yeah. and I buy them in groups of about 25 right now, or 50. I buy them in groups of 50. And for right now, I'm waiting for I have these first three events like right on top of each other, and I'll see how many I sell. And then I'll decide, like, am I going to buy a bunch more, or am I going to take that down? And then, then we do, a bunch of flyers, like so, just like it's like a small poster, and then I think these like sell for like $5 or something like that, or maybe $5 signed or something like that. Do beer cozies. What else do we got in here? I still have a bunch of stuff that hasn't got here yet. Oh, mouse pads. I like this one. That's pretty cool, right? I don't remember what we're selling them for, but yeah, a bunch of stuff like that. Mugs. I have socks on our website. I just set up the website to sell merch. The only problem with that though is if you're not buying it in bulk, if you do the like media on demand, it's really expensive to get the stuff made and shipped. So it's like if anybody buys it off the website, it's going to be expensive. Like I think it's like $30 for the socks, whereas, I probably sell those in bulk at a thing for I don't know, 10 or 15. But anyway, so yeah, like that'll be the stuff. And then yes, DVDs for sure. On a hard place. So unfortunately, one of the things that's going to keep me from doing that, at least initially, is the crowdfunder. So, we did a crowdfunder and, we charged something like $60 for Blu-rays, and I have to deliver all of those before I sell anything cheaper anywhere else. You know what I mean? Because it just wouldn't be fair to those people that paid, $60 for a thing to sell it for 30, before they get theirs, so like I just got the last of the behind the scenes stuff edited to actually author our Blu-rays. So when I have the Blu-rays and DVDs authored, I'll do one version for the Indiegogo people. It's like everything, they fully loaded Blu-ray. And then I'll do like kind of a crippled version of that I'll sell later in the year in conventions and release for physical media. It just won't have quite the same number of stuff on it that the Indiegogo people got. But yeah, I still have, because I did Indiegogo for Craving, and you have to buy the DVDs in bulk if you're going to send them like that. So I forget how many we ended up selling and ordering, but I ended up with like almost 100 copies surplus. So I'm going to be taking those Craving ones out with me to these conventions to see if I can offload some of those. I think that'll be cool. All right. So Eric asks, thanks for all this. Would you say that a low budget narrative breaking, even making any money, is a lot based on chance, mainly just on Tubi and Amazon? About to get started on another feature and trying to figure out if I should expect any shot breaking even. So yes, the simple answer is yes. I think there's an educated guess portion to it, and and this is just something we have to be honest with ourselves. Like, what kind of filmmaker are we? Like, everybody thinks they're a good filmmaker and they're going to make a good movie that's going to give the audience what they want, but like, are you really? And if you can answer that question yes, and be objective about it, and be accurate about it, then your odds of breaking even are pretty good. But if you can't answer that question, or you're just wrong about that, and you're not gonna, and I think honestly, there's a lot of people making movies. I don't think there's a lot of people making good movies. And I've often said that, having a good movie isn't enough in and of itself, but I do think it's kind of the jumping off point. And by good, I don't necessarily mean like technically, like beautiful, pristine sound and, great effects. I'm talking about a good story, a story well told, a story that's giving an audience what they need. I mean, some of my highest earning movies have been documentaries that are like very low production quality. Like, the one of our biggest earners is a movie called Bigfoot Beyond the Legend. And like on a technical level as a filmmaker, I look at that thing and I'm like, I cannot believe this thing made like this much money in a year, you know, because I spent about 5 days on it, like total, and you know what I mean. But what it did, like it gave that audience, that Bigfoot audience, exactly what they were looking for, or a big enough segment of that audience exactly what they were looking for. Because like it made most of that money on Amazon TVOD, and it had hundreds of user ratings. And you know, it's, I think to this day still it's 4 out of 5. You know, and you don't see that a lot on super low budget stuff. So you know, like they dug it. So yeah, but you know, so if you can make a good thing and a marketable thing, then you have a pretty good chance at breaking even. But you know, you have to be honest with yourself as far as, you know, can I market well? Can I make the movie well? You know, and that will give you your answer more than, you know, market saturation. I love the small posters. No, if you only had socks. I'm not gonna get into that. Oh, you know what? I did say I was going to talk about Craving, so I guess I will talk about that for a minute. Craving. So this is a really good example of again, perception too. So I think, you know, some of you watching, you know, probably watched, you know, my promotion for Craving, seen me promote it, seen all the reviews, like blah blah blah, and think, wow, this movie probably made a lot of money. Well, it didn't make a lot of money. It did okay. So in the first, basically, we'll just talk about the first year. So it came out in I think February of 23. And we opened up just on TVOD. It was through Indie Rights. I think for the first 3 months, it was making around $2,000 a month on Amazon, maybe a little less. And then it was also on like Google Play and like YouTube rental. And you know, it wasn't making anything on those. It was mostly Amazon. So it did, like I said, about $2,000 a month for the first 3 months. Then we dropped it on Tubi. Its first month on Tubi, it did somewhere between 6 and 8,000. I can't remember which. And then I think, and you know, continued on with the, you know, 1,000, 1,500 months on Amazon. And then I think the second month on Tubi, I think it dropped 40%, probably a little more the month after that. It fairly quickly, it got to a point where it was making about like 2,000 a month on Tubi. And by the end of the first year, it was making about 3,000 like a quarter collectively. If you add it all up, and then I also did on my own, I did a physical media release through Allied Von. I'm trying to remember now, like that saw us around 12 or 15,000, something like that. Anyway, collectively on the first year, the movie made around $50,000. And you know, if it had been traditionally funded, it would be not financially successful. You know, the movie, the full budget was around $90,000. Luckily for me, $70,000 of that was crowdfunded. So, you know, so technically it's successful. The investors were paid back, plus 10%, plus, you know, whatever percent they have of the rest of it. And, you know, producers are now seeing their percents. So I guess, you know, technically successful film, but, you know, if you think about the time that was put into it, you know, I spent almost 2 years on that movie, and I've personally probably lost a little bit of money because, you know, I put in quite a bit of that, and some of that I never got paid back for. But, you know, as I've said many times, you know, I kind of look at, you know, my narratives now are a little bit more high passion stuff. It is where I take a little bit more of a risk, you know. And Craving, I think Craving's a good movie. I think it was a tricky movie to market because, and I knew this going into it. You know, it is a, you know, it's a crime thriller that, you know, flips to a monster movie in the last 15 minutes. But, you know, prior to that last 15 minutes, there's not a lot of monster mayhem. You know, it's, you know, a little dusk till dawny. but with an even shorter, the second half, So like I always knew that was going to be kind of tricky, which is another reason why I decided to crowdfund that. But yeah, that's pretty much where it is. And it's in its second year, it's making a little less than 3,000 a quarter now, maybe way less than that now. I'm not sure. To be honest, we haven't got this quarter's thing. I think the last quarter it was like maybe 2,500, something like that. But anyway, so like I expect, maybe another, $10,000 to $15,000 from, streaming and physical this year. But it'll take that one before it technically passes the budget. It'll probably take 3-4 years, before it's like over the 90 grand mark, So, and that is a movie, like, honestly, like I said, the movie is pretty good quality. I marketed the hell out of it. I did some paid marketing. I really pushed it, like, and I've had some people, say stuff, well, maybe you aren't marketing that well. I market pretty damn well. I think it's a good, a good indicator of how hard the market can be, you know? But I'm not complaining, like I saw, what it was doing and, what it made. And I tried to adjust for A Hard Place. So, like A Hard Place, for example, is much more marketable. It's a monster movie through and through. It starts with monsters, has monsters all the way through and all the way to the end, and different types of monsters. There's a big, there's a big horror action set piece every 15 minutes. It's paced well, it's funny, I think audience wise, I think it'll register with a broader audience. So like I think our revenue potential for this one is much greater than what Craving was. And it's also, the reason that I'm going into my own pocket to pay, more for marketing, to hire PR firms. I'm paying for my travel to do all this, theatrical premieres and, horror conventions, like all of that's coming out of my pocket, in hopes that it'll make, it'll pay off. But honestly, at this point, I don't know. 6 months from now, a year from now, I'll be able to talk on it a little bit more. But I hope so. I really hope so. And that's the thing about filmmaking, guys. At the end of the day, like, it's all a gamble. Like, there are no certainties. You could spend, $150,000, $200,000 on a movie. It could come out great. You could have like a cast that you think is going to sell it. You can have great marketing. You can be like, oh, this is going to be it. It's going to make a ton of money. And then it just doesn't. You just never know, So like the important thing to do is just, you never put all your eggs in one basket. You always plan the next movie. And, again, before Craving was a year out, I was already planning A Hard Place. A Hard Place hasn't even come out yet, and I'm setting up for the next movie. Apex Predators Club is going to happen in 2025, and it's even bigger than A Hard Place or Craving. Actually, put together, it's bigger. And and I'm going to go down the whole road all over again. And again, I don't know how it will all turn out for sure. But it's what I do. And then, in the meantime, I'll make smaller docs and I'll keep money rolling in through those. And, it for me, that's my life. I make documentaries, and then once every other year, I make a new horror movie or a new narrative film. And yeah. Yes, Apex Predators Club. Yes, that's a new movie. Yeah, I haven't talked about this publicly at all yet. I'll be talking more about it coming up in the future months. I'm starting to do a lot of press, and they're asking questions about it. But yeah, it's basically a kind of a Most Dangerous Game situation. But it's like billionaires that are paying to hunt different species of monsters. Yeah, it's pretty wicked. So we got like I think seven species of monsters, and there'll be like a couple of your like classics, but some like really different like unusual monsters, like dipping into Grimm's fairy tales and stuff. Yeah, honestly, I think it's the best script I've ever written. And I'm really, really looking forward to digging into this one. I have some great initial art done for it that I really want to share, but that, I just don't want to do it too early. Anyway, guys, I think that will pretty much do it. Unless anybody has any last questions, I don't think so. Da, da, da. Let me do this one real quick. How can I make cost-free documentaries and make money? I edit and film everything. Well, if you film it and you edit it and then you distribute it through a place like Film Hub, or I know I'm making it sound simple, but it really is that simple. Like, man, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, but like, here's what I do when I do a documentary. I want to make a Bigfoot documentary. So I try to find people locally that I can interview about Bigfoot, and then I go and I interview them for, like maybe an hour or 2 hours a piece. I try to interview 3 or 4 people, sometimes more. And then I take those interviews and I edit them down into a story that's about 90 minutes long. I use a combination of B-roll that they provide, some B-roll that I shoot on set, and stock B-roll, and I fill it out. And that's how I do it. And then I distribute it. All right, guys, that is going to do it. Keep making movies.